You know, there's World Equestrian Games stuff going on there. That little festival thing, it's actually an empty field. And there's a very interesting story about that empty field. It used to be full of a bunch of old buildings like these. Yeah, it was one of the older blocks in the city. It had a club and a bunch of other stuff on it. A really cool hat shop, a guy called the Mad Hatter. And like a punk billiards club and a venue club. And this guy decided that he wanted to turn it into his own personal penis extension and opted to doze the whole thing. Then never mind that, yeah, it was a little run down now, but whenever it was built, it had the Lexington's first greengrocer and just a bunch of cool stuff. Like the oldest permanent greengrocer building, built in the 1820s or something like that. And just a bunch of really cool stuff. And despite the historic society and people who live here saying, no, don't take it down because this is like the one block where we have nightlife, he's like, no, screw you guys, you just don't know what you're missing. And he bulldozed it. And he said, I'm gonna put up this 5-star hotel that's gonna be the tallest building in the city, and blah blah blah. And we're all like, yeah, I think we've heard this kind of stuff before, because the guy had done a couple of other developments where he convinced the city that, yeah, this would be a great, fantastic idea, and everybody's gonna come there, it's gonna revitalize the town, and blah blah blah. And it ends up being a piece of crap, and nobody goes to it. That's not the first time that's happened. So he convinces himself and says, well, I'm the owner of this property, so I can do whatever I want. So he tears it down, and he says groundbreaking for this hotel will happen in a certain, like, 6 months after we finish bulldozing, and yada yada yada, and it's going to be ready in time for the World Equestrian Games. And 6 months go by, there's no groundbreaking. 9 months go by, there's no groundbreaking. And as it turns out, this guy's funding supposedly fell through. And we're all pretty sure he didn't even have funding to begin with. He was just being a jerk. Because, like, he's got this long, sordid tale about how he had the funding, and it was this guy's was going to fund out of his personal money, and he lived overseas, and then he died, and the money just evaporated, and blah blah blah. And he had contracts with Hard Rock and all these other sort of people to build things in there. And Hard Rock was like, no, actually, we did not agree to that. So for several months we had a giant block-sized mud hole in the middle of downtown. And then he said, okay, well, since this all fell through, I'll just put some grass in and make it a park. So he puts grass in, and then he has the police come in and escort people off of it whenever they try to use it as a park. And he gets so frustrated with people using it for what he said it was supposed to be for, that he puts up a fence. And it's like, you jerk. You absolute jerk. So now we have what used to be a really nice area, a group of interesting buildings with some interesting venues in, where everybody who wasn't a redneck and was under 45 would go. And now we have nothing. And we have a park that we can't even use. So it's mighty big of him to allow us the privilege of being able to use that block for the World Equestrian Games. I hope he rots. I really do. I guess I should go ahead and just call him out. Yeah, Jim Webb, I hope you rot in hell. He even had the mayor against him doing that. He got on local PBS show and was talking with the Historical Society and the mayor and all this other sort of stuff, and they're like, yeah, but what about Victorian Square, and what about some of these other properties that you developed? Well, that was different because blah 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 and blah blah blah, and we're going to promise us that this is going to be different, that this is, if you go through with this, that it's going to be a worthwhile venture. Oh yeah, this is going to be great, and blah blah blah, and it's going to revitalize the city, and we're going to have a Hilton, and people will have jobs, and if you're rich enough you could actually buy a loft in there, and blah blah blah. Yeah, we didn't get shit. And on the even then, when all of that was still in place, when the block was still there, and I was watching this, and I said to myself, this is it's not going to be different. This guy's a shitter. He's just a giant shyster. And it was true. I can't believe that crap. But like, just because a building is old doesn't mean that it needs to be torn down. I came from a place that had no memory. Like, anything older than about 20 or 30 years would get torn down. There's a place where in antique shops, if it was older than 40 years old, they'd call it antique. And it was a treat to see things that were 50 years old. And they're still doing it, but they've always done that. But these guys act like they got some semblance of historical understanding, and then they pull crap like that. I hate people sometimes.